Yeah. Okay. So, just thinking through communication and structures, I really appreciate knowing what to expect and how to navigate a space. So, in this space, we're going to follow these communication guidelines that were created by NBLA. And the first guideline is that we want to practice healing centered interactions, and we'll do so by being mindful of potentially triggering language and actions and being mindful of our own triggers at the same time. Also, we're going to remember that this is not a group therapy space, it's a dialogue that we're having together. We're going to seek first to understand and then to be understood. So, an example of that is the thinking process of I feel hurt, I am important. I also understand that this group is important. First, I want to understand the context of the comment that hurt me, and then seek for the group to understand why I was hurt by the comment. So, thinking about understanding first and then being understood. We want to scrap societal requirements to perform white social norms in this space, and that includes toxic positivity, neurotypical analytic social norms, class status, etc. The second guideline is that we want to practice leaning into discomfort and practice leaning into challenging conversations. So we'll do that by gaining an awareness of how our intersecting privileges and oppressions inform how we interact with one another. We're also going to practice being aware of tone policing and how our own biases may be reenacting oppression in this space. Lastly, we're going to try taking space and making space for others. Another way of saying that is by, giving and receiving conversation, basically making sure that we speak up and also step back when it's other people's turn to speak. And we're going to value feedback as an act of generosity and trust. Reflect on that feedback that we receive and then respond to the feedback. And our third guideline is to practice respecting ourselves and each other. And we're going to do that by practicing speaking with I statements and from our own experience. So instead of saying, when you, like a lot of time we'll be like, oh, when you did that, or when you when you act in a certain way, but when we really mean when I act in a certain way, when I feel a certain way. So we want to say those I statements instead of you. We're going to resist the urge to compare our neurodiverse journeys, and especially I think in a negative way. Like I've been through this, so my journey is different from yours. We're trying to honor the fact that we all have our own paths. We're going to not give unsolicited advice. We're also going to try to stay mindful of Oh, we're definitely going to stay mindful of pronouns, not try. Let's stay mindful of each other's pronouns and other gendered language as much as possible. And if you make a mistake in that area, remembering to just learn and listen to feedback and move forward. This is a learning space. And then let's remember to tell our own stories, not the stories of others. And let's keep community members' identities confidential, only sharing with explicit consent outside of the space. All right, so those are the guidelines written out by the Non-Binary Union of Los Angeles. I think we're ready to get this party started.
Thank you. Brandy, is Matt trying to log back in? Okay, cool. So first, why don't we just introduce ourselves, and then we're gonna actually, talk a bit about bullying. So I'm just gonna start with an introduction to myself, especially if there's new people here. My name is Jersey, or Jersey Noah. A lot of people think my name's Noah, and Jersey's like a reference to New Jersey. My pronouns are they and or he, so they can be used interchangeably. I'm autistic. I'm 35. I learned I was autistic just a few years ago, and I was diagnosed with ADHD in my 20s. And I was also like misdiagnosed with a lot of things, which seems to happen to a lot of us. And nothing really felt quite right. Nothing was right, really. Yeah, I'm Jewish. I am transgender, which I may have said already. Yeah, there's a lot of things about me. Sometimes I don't know which ones to list. I have seizures, and yeah, keep learning new things about myself. Like sometimes I I'll think broadly about the autistic community and like prescribe, if that's the right word, something to everybody, and realize like my challenges can be unique even in autism. So this group is also really helpful for that. I'm gonna pass it to Sandra.
Hi, my name is Sandra. I am the writer, podcaster behind the ADHD Good Life on Instagram, Twitter. That's that, yeah. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, self-diagnosed autistic. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 40, and self-diagnosed autistic, like, I don't know the time, but recently, more recently. I'm Canadian. I live in UK with my partner, and we have a kid, and he's lovely. Well, they, his gender is now currently alien creative. He has told me, they've told me. And yeah, he's 7. He's a real joy, actually. And I just found out today that the half-term holiday, which I thought was just until Monday, is actually the whole week. And I'm just like, damn, what am I going to do for a week with my kid? But we'll figure out what happens. I'll just describe myself. I'm Black, femme, long dreadlocks, which someday soon I will be styling and cutting these a little bit. They are down to my waist. My room, it has my kids' toys, some books, poster picture from the Uffizi in Italy when I went there on my travels when I was a lot younger, and artwork from different places I've been to, and my partner's favorite blue chair behind me. And I will pass it on to Brandy.
My name is Brandy, and my pronouns are she, her. And my partner is Matt, down there, and or wherever he is on the screen for you guys. And I was diagnosed as autistic about 1.5 years ago, or a little over 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. And that journey began first with an Ehlers-Danlos syndrome diagnosis, which a lot of autistic people have, and then ADHD, and then it led to autism, and then that also led to Matt's diagnosis because we were so similar. So he came along for the ride there, and we found out we're both autistic, which was pretty cool. It answered a lot of stuff. And we both live in Asheville, North Carolina, and love our fur child, Scarlett. And I like singing and autism advocacy, and I work for an autistic dating app full-time, which takes up a lot of my time, but it's super fun. So just to describe everything behind me, I am behind a pink picture, and that's my favorite picture I took when we were on vacation in Puerto Rico. And I have medium colored hair, blonde-ish femme. I'm mixed indigenous. My mother is white, my father is Cherokee, and I'm wearing a black ruffly top. And I'm gonna pass it to Lauren Melissa.
Hi, I'm Lauren Melissa, pronouns she, her, and I am also known as Autianel on Instagram. And I am a Black biracial woman with medium toned skin, big curly hair. I'm wearing a light green Adidas sweatshirt, and I am currently sitting on my bed. I have a sun and a moon painting behind me, plants, and a giant bunny. And I am autistic. I was diagnosed with autism at age 23. I also have depersonalization derealization disorder, but I'm currently stable in that. And my current job is an instructional support specialist, making classrooms more inclusive for autistic children. And I reside in New York City. And I'm going to pass it on to Maisie.
Hi, my name is Macy Satantio. I am an Asian American, born and raised in Indonesia. I'm Chinese Indonesian. So my heart is divided into two parts, one in that part of the world and the other half here in California. I run two Instagram accounts, one for my advocacy on behalf of autistic kids. It's just under my name at Macy Satantio, and the other one is at Autism Career Pathways. And that one is to do anything related to Autism Career Pathways, our nonprofit. And what we want to do at our nonprofit is to figure out the how to educate and employ neurodivergent people. So that's the platform that we're building, and I'm very passionate to educate small businesses in our community, and definitely passionate about helping neurodivergent people who are more impacted by their diagnosis and conditions. I'm sitting in my dining room with blue painting behind me. Blue wall behind me and painting at the beach. I am formally diagnosed with autism. I struggle learning to read, and I have dyscalculia, dyslexia. I have auditory processing disorder and sensory processing disorder as well. And I'm passing this to Matt.
Hey, I'm Matt, 39, autistic male with I don't remember the right term, sorry. But I sorry, I'm really scatterbrained today. I have a gaming background with curtains, little plant in the back. I'm wearing a black baseball cap. I am really glad to be a part of this group and hope that I'm able to help out with any issues anyone has technically or anything I can be of help with. And yeah, pass it to TJ, or who do I, is that, I joined after y'all were already doing intros, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So
I'm reading.
yeah, when TJ writes in the chat, Sandra's going to read.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiffany from Non-Functioning Autism. My pronouns are she, I don't know, she, them. I don't know if they're all of them. I think there was a typo. I'm sorry. I have thanks. I have two autistic children and a preteen as a single mom. I was diagnosed with autism as a teen during burnout my first year of college then it was called aspergers. And again, during a burnout in my early 30s, I also have epilepsy, ADHD, OCD, and anxiety. I'm a Black woman with light green headband and green earrings and a black shirt that reads in multicolors with a bare dark gray background.
All right, thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to put 3 questions in the chat at a time, because it'll be easier for me than adding one question at a time for everyone to read. So I'm going to try to do about 2 to 3 in the chat at a time, and we'll go through them one at a time. So I'm just enter the first 3 questions. So why don't we first, and again, nobody has to answer, like for panelists and people watching, not everyone will answer everything. We're going to answer what we're comfortable answering, what we feel like we can answer in the moment. I feel like we all have a similar energy today, which is so interesting because, yeah, I feel like being autistic, you just like never, for me, I never really know how my anxiety is going to play out in something. Like sometimes it kind of like makes me like seem so chilled. You guys know that meme that's like, yeah, I can do 2 things at once. I'm freaking out and chilling at the same time or something. I feel like that's my life, and I'm getting a similar vibe from everyone. So I just really appreciate you all being here, whether that's your experience or not. So why don't we first just talk about like, what is bullying?
This is Lauren Melissa, and I'll just kick us off. So bullying, I think it's hard to get a basic definition pinned down because, if we get too into defining what bullying is, then it can leave out experiences that are valid. And then there's also different kinds of bullying. There's in-person bullying. There's cyberbullying or bullying online. I think that it is important, though, to have a definition in some sense of bullying, because I personally, and people can totally cut me off about this, think that there's a difference between like being bullied and having somebody be mean to you. And I think that the reason why it's important to make that distinction is not because it's okay for people to be mean to each other. It's not. But bullying is, I think that the thing that surrounds bullying is that there isn't support and there isn't ever a safe place, or there rarely feels like there's a safe place. And there's also a lack of control and being able to stop it or fight back even. And I think that bullying, it can take the form of being physically harmed. It can take the form of being psychologically harmed. And it can also take the form of having someone try to single a person out and damage how others perceive them. So once, like I've been bullied physically, where people physically hurt me and like threw me into lockers. And I've been bullied, and then also a level of like sexual violence bullying I've experienced. I've also been bullied psychologically, where people called me names or gaslit me. And then I've also been bullied in a sense that people tried to make it seem as though I was not worthy of others' respect. And I think it's important to notice the overlaps there between bullying and abuse. And sometimes I do wonder why we have the term bullying instead of calling it abuse. And so that's something that I think about often. But I wanted to say, like, take it away, the rest of everybody, because I don't know how to even answer that. I'm just throwing it out there.
That was a great answer, I think, because it is really hard to define bullying. And so I feel like including that idea that it's really hard to define, but giving like reference to what happens when people are being bullied. I don't know. That just felt really perfect to me. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
I also want to add to, I think the thing about bullying is like what happens over time as well. Like a single incident isn't usually defined as bullying, but at least like from a standpoint, like as for kids, I guess too, like in schools and stuff like that. It's stuff that happens like over and over and over again from the same person, and like targeted. And I think that's a really important distinction to make as well. And I think too, you know, I think with the bullying too, there is like physical things I think that happen, but also to a lot of psychological issues that happened over time, and I think that stays with us a lot too, especially if we get bullied as kids, you know, relentlessly. Like maybe a lot of us did. I know I did. And I think sometimes too, like it can, you know, be like even a group of kids or a group of people doing this over and over again too. And I think sometimes even if it is like a one-off or two incidents, you know, but the fact that there's so many people that might do or say the same things or whatever, even like have an impact as well. That's actually, I just came up with that right now. And also, Tiffany had written, I wasn't bullied much as a kid, or maybe I wasn't aware. However, adulthood has brought me nothing but bullying from inside my relationships to traumatic work experiences. Yeah.
That's a good segue into just talking about have you guys been bullied as a kid and as an adult? Like pretty looking at what Tiffany said, kind of the same idea. Like what has your experience changed from being a kid to an adult, and in what ways?
I remember like when I was adopted, when I was 3.5 years old and started school, I guess the next year, right? So kindergarten or like reception or whatever they call it. And that's whenever I first found, like, remember bullying. Like that's the first I can remember coming into school most days and the older kids making fun of me. Kids are like 10, 12 years old making fun of me. And always make fun of me because I was Black, because of my hair, just everything I dress, so everything. And that was the first time that I heard like racial slurs as well. It was the first time I called the N-word. I was like 4 years old. It would just, you know, but I grew up in like a white neighborhood, the only Black girl, so it was kind of like a target, I guess, just because of being noticeably different. And then as I got older and my emotional dysregulation got worse, and just, yeah, then it just became, I think it became more of sport for everybody to just make fun of me because like I would just get so upset. And my parents would just be like, well, you know, you're just gonna have to get used to that. You know, let's just, you know, stop crying. It's just how it is. And I think even as an adult, you don't like, I have the, well, I was a Black femme, I guess. I don't know if I ever felt safe anywhere, because it was so easy. It's so easy, I think, for people to just like now as adults just put things in slyly, say things that, you know, I can't talk back to, for fear of like people getting upset at me, or, you know, or me getting in trouble or whatever. So it's just kind of, yeah, tricky, but always impactful. That's what I thought.
Did you want to say something, Brandy?
Brandy, do you know
Brandy,
that
you're
you
on mute.
muted yourself again? Okay.
Muted, unmute, mute. Okay, got it. But yeah, I was, excuse me, bullied as a kid, like unmercifully. Like to the point where I think the first time I tried to commit suicide was in 2nd grade. I mean, it was like I went to this small little school, and it was like this little country rural town, and I was unique. I was different. I am more white passing. My brother is not, and my dad also. So, there was the whole like, are you adopted and all of that, and why do you look different, and why are you so white? And yeah, but the biggest one was more so just because I was so open and loud and like artsy, and the people around me in my small little town were just so different, and they I dressed different, and I didn't care to wear like clothes that stood out, and it was just like anything I could be pinpointed on. It was just, this little group of people, and in my school you had the same group of people from like kindergarten all the way till you went to middle school. So it was just the same little pack, just getting you over and over and over. And at that time, the teachers, they wouldn't really do anything about it. It would just kind of be brushed over a little bit. And so, oh, sorry, can you hear me okay? Okay, there was like a lag and it looked super weird. Anyway, sorry. So as I got to be an adult, it became like this core part of me, like it affected me to the core, really. Like it affected all of my relationships. And then I always thought people were bullying me. As like in middle school, I think in 7th grade, I had like a breakdown, and I had to just stop and be homeschooled because I couldn't handle it. And then this transferred into like jobs and in my 20s and things. It was just like, why? I'm just being myself, but why is this so irritating to everyone? I don't understand, and then you stop being yourself. You just start being like what everyone wants you to be. And so as I got older and realized I was autistic, it was like, I see now, I see why that happened. And that sucks. That's not okay, but I'm going to try my best to like not do that, not just like melt myself into other people and just be myself and have my own opinion, and not let all of the bullying that I encountered like change me anymore. And in a way, when I encounter people who want to bully me online for autism advocacy, it kind of made it where I'm like, it's like not as big of a deal. Like it doesn't affect me to the core like that anymore. It's like I can sort of, in a way, I felt like it prepared me to take the hit of people coming at me a little bit online, because I have, a few people that like to, like one person made a whole video about me and how I'm not really autistic and put it on YouTube and all this stuff, and did a few posts about me and called me stupid and all this stuff. And it was just like, it didn't affect me like it used to. It used to, I would have obsessed about that and just, I know that, I don't know. Yeah, I had some, went through therapy and PTSD and all of that. But yeah, I think in a way it made things like, I don't know if that makes any sense. It like prepared me for it. It's like, this isn't new to me. That's all you got. Okay. So yeah.
And some people are asking in the chat too, like, was it like being bullied as an adult? And yeah, I feel very similarly to the experiences of Sandra and Brandy, being bullied as a kid, as a teen. But I think what surprised me was that I thought the bullying was going to end after I graduated high school, and it didn't at all. I was bullied in college, and then after college, I was bullied in the workplace. And the way it looked was surprising because in college, nobody bullied me to my face anymore, or like pushed me in the lockers, or called me ugly and all of that. In college, it was all behind my back. And I thought everything was okay. And because I couldn't really read body language or cues from my peers, I didn't realize how much other people, I guess, despised me or wanted to make fun of me. And I would get these wake up calls where someone would tell me, you know, your best friend talks about you every day to other people and is making it so that nobody will like you. And I had no idea. And I would have to ask my best friend if it was true. And my best friend would respond, it's not true. And then I would have to make a decision. I would have to, because I couldn't read who was telling me the truth, who was lying, even less than like, you know, an holistic person. And I would have to make these decisions and it would be really scary. And then I would break up, I would burn a bridge with someone because I didn't know if I could trust them anymore. And that would make things worse in a lot of ways. And it was just constantly, I felt like I was walking in an ocean of uncertainty of who I could trust, who was really my friend. And it got to a point where I actually had my entire friend group talking about me behind my back, like 10 people. And I was the president of the Queer Straight Alliance. And I had a $5,000 budget that I was managing in college to bring in queer speakers. And I got to a point where I reached out to someone to give them some money to help them bring a speaker that was also queer. I was like, oh, you know, we'll collaborate and I'll throw a couple hundred your way. That sounds ridiculous, but like that's how it worked. And they said, oh, we can't accept your money because we don't want to be associated with your organization on campus because of these rumors going on about you. So I couldn't even do my job at the school anymore because of the pervasiveness of the bullying. And it didn't stop. It never stopped until I graduated. I actually graduated early so I could escape it. And then it carried into the workplace, similar situations, but now just colleagues. But after I was diagnosed with autism, I stopped blaming myself for it and started recognizing the terrible behavior of the other people. That it was not actually something that I needed to change about myself, but it was like these other people were seeing something in me that they could use to feel empowered in an awful way. And when I came to that realization, it actually empowered me to fight back a little bit more. And sometimes fighting back would be like ignoring them and not caring about it. And then sometimes fighting back would be me literally going to their face and being like, I know you said this about me. Like the first time I would hear it, I actually remember I was on the playground at a school with other teachers around me. And I went up to a teacher and I was like, you did not need to say that about me. To their face, like on the playground, and they freaked out. And they never said anything about me after that. Because I did it publicly and I just was like so scary, I guess. But it took a while to get me there and I still have to watch out for it. And I definitely have a lot of worries because of it that I can't trust other people. And I'm gonna stop there. I could go into like the virtual bullying, but which I don't experience very much, but I experienced this year and it was weird. Okay, Katie. Everyone wants to see your butt.
Yeah, I kind of do. Thank you for sharing. Macy, I saw you unmute yourself. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think bullying behavior is when one is consistently being targeted And I think it could start, the whole thing can start in a very, very subtle way. I think bullies are very smart. They know how to pick their targets. What happened to my family member when he was younger, he was being put in, he wanted to have friends. And I think kids know about that. And they purposely would do things like, when they play games, they would cheat on him. And also they would place bets. If my family member brings certain things to a certain toy to school, and then my family member would be involved in this like bets. And then he would like lose like things. It's very, very subtle. Or people would say, can I borrow your stuff? Or can I borrow this? And my family member would not know how to set boundaries when they were younger. But it's a consistent behavior towards a person who's not aware that, the bigger picture, what's going on. And I think the pattern, it gets louder and louder, and it just got to a point where it became physical, and then that's the sad thing. I think for autistic people, I'm very, very trusting. Like, I don't think negatively about people at all. And I got into so much trouble when I was younger. I was duped into joining a cult. I just didn't know. Like, I just wanted to have a sense of belonging. And to today, that's just still how I am. And I don't often realize, I just I don't know how to protect myself, honestly, until it's like too late. So yeah, so it could be, what I'm saying is, it could be very, very subtle also, but it's recurring.
Just to, I'm gonna pass it real quick, but just response to something you said, Macy. I feel like you and I have been talking as friends for like a year-ish now, maybe a little more. And so this is the second event we're participating and collaborating in together. We did the special interest week and this, and I just can attest to the fact that you are very trusting. Like, you, like, even when someone, I remember with the special interest week, there was like a lot of communication happening that was kind of out of context. And you and I started messaging privately, and it was like, you can see the good, and you really do give people the benefit of the doubt, where like, I was like, I need this to end right now. And I feel like we came to a middle ground together. But it's interesting to hear you say that, because I see you as a very trusting person. Yeah.
It's called being gullible, not in a not smart way. And it's just, I feel sad that I don't always learn from my mistakes. It just keeps going. Like, it's really, really sad. I mean, for me.
I just really want to like push. I've like been pushing back against that like a little bit. I'm gonna say it. I know I maybe shouldn't, but I just like, I don't think it's right that autistic people should be told that they're gullible because
Yes,
they believe
thank
that
you.
people should be good people, like that people are good people. Like, I think it's a travesty that autistic people are looked as gullible or naive because we authentically think that people would just be kind or wouldn't want to hurt others. I don't think it's something that we need to change about ourselves, that we need to become harder skinned or meaner just because the rest of the world, it can be so mean. Like, that's such a, not going back at you, but at society, not at you, Maisie, but society. Like, I think that it's that the autistic people are being taken advantage of because of kindness is a sign that society needs to change, not that people need to become equally hold to one another. Okay, soapbox
Yeah.
on.
Say that's so interesting. Like we always like blame ourselves, you know, and it's like it's a society thing. It's just wild, but not gullible. I don't. Yeah, I agree. I agree on most of for sure. Oh, I'm gonna read this thing. I'm gonna read what Tiffany wrote. Bullying is unique to autistic people because it generally is an invisible difference. So due to being expected to act one way and then acting in an unexpected way, people tend to be very mean. Yeah. For me, bullying has impacted how I feel about my worth in close relationships and leaves me with no trust for individuals who want to get close. Yeah, I relate there. At work, I was talked about, gossiped about, lied about. My in-laws have made my life hell. I shrank and went into a second disastrous burnout, which led to my second autism diagnosis. I haven't been able to work in 8 years, and my medical conditions worsened in that period due to stress of other adults. To this day, I only trust kids because they are truthful. Oh, you know, that is, sorry, I'm just going to add, I always felt that, and I never really understood why that, just that last sentence that you read about really feeling like, yeah, I could trust a lot of kids in my classes over anyone else, and just felt like I could understand like kids' patterns and whatnot for a really long time, but never understood adults at all until being diagnosed and actually starting to learn about, yeah, just adults and the world. But I never felt like that with kids because they were so honest and truthful. That's so interesting. Sorry.
Yeah, I feel like everything people are saying is really resonating with me. And I think this is the first time I'm like looking at the chat while we're talking. Like I said, I kind of have this like calmness about me with this like internal freak out. It's kind of like my life, to be honest. But it's like this has become natural enough now that we're doing a third that I can read the chat, and it feels really cool. Yeah, everything people are saying really resonates with me, and obviously people that are listening to. I feel like bullying is really hard to talk about. So I just want to say, like, I appreciate everything, like sharing anything or not sharing anything. And to the panelists and people in the chat, I think this is like, feel really heavy. Like I can feel it in my body, you know? And it was cool because Laura, Melissa, when you said like about autistics being trustworthy, and that's, we should be able to trust people, like we shouldn't. I saw someone in the chat like being like fist pump, say it louder for the back. And I was like, that's exactly the feel. Like it gave me this like, it like relieved the intensity for a moment in like, but like, I don't know, I was just reading this quote by Miss Major, who is a Black trans elder activist who was in the Stonewall riots. And it just, you know, I was going to explain something that's really hard for me to explain. Sandra, you know exactly what I'm experiencing right now, that communication thing we've been talking about. I can't put it in words, so I'm just going to jump to what I was actually going to say, which is like my personal experience with bullying. Like I said, I'm trans. For me, that means like all trans people are different. Some trans people medically transition, some people don't, like, you know, all the things. So this is just my experience, but I am a trans person who has medically transitioned. So I grew up being called she, her, being perceived a lot of times as a girl, doing things like girl sports teams, but I was actually relatively frequently perceived as a boy when I was young. So much that I actually had this boyfriend in 6th grade, and he was new to town, and we lived in neighboring apartments. And when his friends came over from the other town to visit, they just assumed I was a boy. And so, and I actually loved it. And he like went along with it, I think, because he was embarrassed that his girlfriend looked like a boy. But that was like kind of some of my experience. However, like there were times where there was no option for me to present the way I wanted, right? Like at a swimming pool, for example. My apartment complex had a outdoor, I grew up in New Jersey and New York, and one of my apartments growing up had an outdoor pool for the summers. So like that's what kids did all the time, every day. And I would get so bullied at the pool. And it's interesting because it wasn't until literally like very recently that I put together like, oh, that's when like gender is so binary at the beach. Anytime you're like swimming at the pool, like the bathing suits kids have to wear. And so it was, I mean, really intense. Mostly I got bullied by older guys. Yeah, I don't want to like trigger anything for anyone, but so just a heads up, if you're like have a fear of water or drowning or that will trigger anything, maybe mute me for a second. Yeah, there were these boys that would like hold me underwater. And the wild thing was there were lifeguards. And I'm like, I in this moment, like when I retell it or just think about it, I was like in survival mode. They would hold me underwater really long times. I was in middle school, they were in high school. They were much bigger and stronger than me. And when I think about it now, I'm like, where were like the lifeguards? Where were any adults like at the pool? Like why were people letting this happen? You know, it's really hard for me to think back to my childhood and know at all. Like sometimes therapists will ask like, when you talk about bullying, like, oh, do you think that like they'll either automatically relate it to autism or automatically relate it to being trans? And I literally, there's so much that I can't tell the difference between. There's stuff that's like blatantly obvious, but a lot of it is just like, everyone has this individualized experience. And this is something Tiffany, who isn't here today, from Fidgets and Fries, was talking about, how you can't like pick these pieces of your identity apart and say like, this is my experience. Like even as a Jewish person, like a lot of people don't realize this happens, but like, even though I grew up in an area with a lot of Jewish people, sometimes like when a community is like higher populated in an area, there is more, it like sounds like it would be safer, but just like where there's no Jewish people, that would also not be safe. Like it can make it really complicated. And kids would like throw pennies at me and the other Jewish kids. A lot of stuff about like money and so something like that. And like that was very obviously related to being Jewish. But with autism, I think that a lot of what you all are saying, like I started to understand what was autism, like what's specific to autism as an adult, because as an adult, I still was getting bullied. And sometimes it was by trans people. But like, it almost felt like people wouldn't believe me. Like I would be like, this thing is happening. These people are saying I'm saying things I'm not, saying I'm behaving in ways I'm not, that's talking behind your back thing, or Melissa was talking about. And I didn't pick up on the context. Now I feel like I've developed a little bit of better of a radar, but honestly, I am someone who spends a lot of time alone, and I don't want to navigate like environments as like to whether or not people are being like upfront and real and like honest, or if they're not being kind. Like I don't want to have to figure that out with people. So that's why I say like this group is, to me, it's like amazing. Like I have friends in person I trust, friends in person that I trust a lot, but it's not often I'm continue doing something with a group. And I wouldn't say it's like, oh, 100% comfortable just because we're all autistic, but like the fact that I want to keep doing it, and I do feel this like camaraderie and trust with you all, is like, it's like a really big thing in my life, because I don't feel that with groups of people.
I have to read something. I'm sorry. Thank you, Josie, for sharing it. Okay, thank you, Josie, for bringing that up. How I acted differently according to my prescribed gender was a point of bullying for me. I felt like a boy as a child and only allowed my parents to buy the stereotypical boys' outfits and clothes. Kids at my school, especially boys, and people at church bullied me for not being the typical girl. And this lasted through high school to the point where I pretended to go through the motions of trying to appear feminine, and that I gave away all of my power to meet society's expectations of gender and sexual attraction. I'm still very mistrusting of cishet men because of the way they treated me as a child and even as an adult, until I started faking everything.
I feel like this is really important too, because gender is so ingrained with societal roles and expectations and societal norms. And like societal roles, expectations, and norms are like the opposite of autism in my brain sometimes. So like I feel like the intersection of gender and autism and bullying is like something that I'm glad we have this space to discuss here today, because I think that autistic people in general are going to be, and have already probably been, so key and instrumental in conversations of gender, because of I mean, there's like Audi gender too, right? That's like a, yeah, everyone's like, yeah. I just think that this is going to be like I think it's a wonderful place, a difficult place of intersection, also a wonderful place of intersection where it's just going to be another one of those areas where autistic people see things for the way it is, truly, without the societal norm veil that everybody seems to be a little bit more comfortable wearing. A lot of people, not everybody, but many non-autistic people seem more comfortable wearing. Autistic people are just going to be like, wait, I'm supposed to dress this way because then people will be nicer to me. Like, what the heck? Like that doesn't make sense. Which I don't think it does make any sense.
That's okay, go on.
Go.
No, just in reference to that, I just I like can't do anything in school unless it's like focused on autism, transness, social justice, and or my special interests. So I tend to revolve everything around that. But in school, I actually did a bunch of research on the overlap of gender and autism. And I know a lot of people know a lot of it, but it was really interesting to look really in depth. I thought one of the most interesting things was not just the relationship between being autistic, trans, non-binary, gender diverse, but there was a study that even looked at non-trans autistic people and found that non-trans autistic people, so cisgender, non-trans autistic people identify less with, are you Sandra, cisgender, sometimes I say non-trans, sometimes
No, I got you.
cisgender. Oh, okay.
I forgot my video was on. Oh, geez.
No, you're good. But it was that, non-trans cisgender autistics are less likely to identify strongly or like have pride in gender, because there's like more of a disconnection to it than a lot of even trans and cisgender non-autistics. So it was more often that, not all the time, but that non-trans autistic people can relate more with like a gender binary in some way, or like have a strong relation to being a man or a woman or male or female than non-autistic, non-trans people. I thought that was really interesting.
It's so funny when I first came into the space and I didn't know anything about being autistic. I didn't identify autistic at that time. But the one thing that always got me, you know, just in talking about ADHD was the fact that, you know, nobody was, well, people were talking about it when in these binaries, but not really looking at how the impact of how, you know, how harmful it was to be put in those boxes, and how, you know, it was beyond just like, oh, you know, if women, like just the gendering of being identified, you know, women, girls with ADHD don't get identified, you know, and I always hated that, like just from the beginning of my advocacy, and I never really understood why until I got more into it. And it was always wild to me that like that no one was really in the ADHD space was really talking about like gender in these ways of, and when I started looking more into it and seeing this really big overlap for neurodivergence and you know, ADHD and autism even higher, it's like, what the hell, like, why are we not talking about it? And I wondered if what you're saying, Jersey, is kind of like the reason why, you know, just, you know, with most of the people just being maybe only ADHD, not thinking that, you know, gender would actually play any kind of role in their lives. Like, I don't know if I can explain it. I'm sorry. It's like it's like 11 o'clock here in an evening here, everyone. So I might be going off the rails a little bit, but yeah, I've always found it wild that no one was having those conversations in the ADHD space at all.
I wanted to also, I think, because you're talking about spaces, like community spaces of ADHD, community spaces of autism. I noticed a lot of the people in the chat box are also talking about whether or not bullying occurs within the community spaces between each other. And Brandy is like nodding softly with large eyes right now. But and I guess I'll say something really quick because I've talked more than Brandy, and I think Brandy is currently ready. But I just wanted to bring up too that within the autistic space, I find that when it comes to issues around and topics around autism, I don't experience a lot of bullying from the autistic community when it comes to that. I experience more cyber bullying when it comes to intersecting issues. Like, I'll just be chilling and talking about sensory issues, and that's all great. But then if race comes up somehow, it's like my DMs become so violent and frightening. Or if issues of queerness or things like that come up, then I am more likely to experience strongly worded messages within my own community. And I think, as some people have been talking about, they're not all ill-intended. I think part of it is like black and white thinking and like, this is my opinion, and like, but I'm just not going to be like, and this is mine, and like go back and like, no, like I don't have like the emotional space for that in my life and in my DMs. Like sometimes I do, but I usually don't. So that's probably the norm. As a queer person, as a Black biracial person, um, and as a woman, I do definitely feel also in being asexual and in being autistic that I live on the margins of a lot of things. And even within the Black autistic community or the white autistic community, because I don't know if they're communities, but spaces, I don't have, I feel on the outside of those as well because of being biracial at times. And I think the strongest moment of bullying that I experienced within my own community has been around those topics, and has been whether or not people wanted to determine if I was respectable, if because I had the right opinions on certain topics. And I have actually had people ask me, can I still respect you? And I was like, yes. I think it was kind of terrifying to be asked that question. Yeah, within my own community.
Something, Jersey, you had posted about people getting on board as a group of people bullying, and I experienced at church. I was the oldest person in our youth group, and I remember I tend to stay quiet and away from people, and I was targeted by pretty much everyone else in the whole youth group. I was just too tall, too weird, and to hear about all these intersecting issues, it's just so sad and messed up that people can't just stay decent to each other. I mean, and the damage does affect you from childhood to the rest of your life. I mean, I think Brandy said, you know, it's changed her character. It came with her from childhood and stuff. And I just, people that think jumping on board because one person saying something funny or whatever to be a part of a group of bullying, that it was so nightmarish for me. I like begged my mom to move churches, and the the response I got from my mother was, well, I lead the choir and your brother does the sound system, so we're stuck and you're just gonna have to deal with it. So I dealt with it until I was old enough to not have my mom control those things. So yeah, oh, and pronouns. I figured it out. He, him, hi. So that's all I got.
I would add too, Matt was homeschooled. So he came from a very religious background. So they kept him very sheltered. So his only interaction socially was at church. So yeah, so that also kind of played into some things, I'm sure. It's like, yeah. There are certain things that about like both of our personalities, like we just don't trust people. So like Jersey was saying, like this group, this is new for us too. It's like, and it's so amazing to be able to like feel like you can trust other people, because bullying your whole life, I mean, it makes you not trust people, and almost like it can make you bitter a lot as well, and it's really hard to come back from that. So yeah, especially like the one question, what is it, when groups of people, yeah, that's something that I noticed, especially after college, after high school, yeah, in workplaces, the groups, and, you know, it's like people like to jump on the one person who's different, and everybody stays in the pack and just, you know, bombs that person. And sometimes for me, I wouldn't realize I was that person until it was just obvious. And then it was like, whoa, wait a second, you know? So I didn't know. And I think that's something that, and as far as like being bullied in our community, it's different. Yeah, it's more so, I believe this and you don't believe the same as me, and so I don't like you. It's just different in a way there. Yeah, it's less aggressive. For me, the more of the bullying has been coming from parents of autistic children. They have been the ones who have been, or not all, like I shouldn't say they, but like a few of those people have been incredibly harsh, yeah, to me, but I just ignore it. I'm not feeding into that. I like Laura Melissa said, I don't have the bandwidth to go back and forth with that kind of thing. It's like, if you want to believe that I'm lying about being autistic, you go right ahead. So I'm not gonna engage in that. But yeah, sorry, I'm out of it today, so I can just like ramble on and on if somebody else wants to say something.
I was just going to say the intersecting identities is really, really difficult online. I think particularly in Black, and if anything with race comes up, oh my gosh, I have to say this, is that some of the most horrific things I've had to deal with, you know, or have been in DMs with supporting like other Black autistics, is like when some like white autistics don't agree with something that's been said with race. Like it's, yeah, some of the things that, those have been the worst. Those have been the absolute worst. And because it's just relentless, And I've had to, talk with some of my, Black friends to be like, them being like, asking me to like, can you speak on this, or, help me, and things like that. Yeah, it's been, I think that's been some of the worst for me. And now I have really strict boundaries on my page now, where like, even if I post something that I think is going to be remotely controversial at all, it's straight up, this is what's going to happen if you're on my page and you're saying anything that's like this, I will like straight up block you. And now I've actually gotten into, if anyone tries to dirty delete, then I will actually screenshot it, and I'll say, if you dirty delete it, then I will also like put it up on my feed, and I will explain why it's whatever ism or phobic or whatever it is. And that actually has gone somewhat well. I think boundaries can be important, but it took me maybe 2 years and a lot of extra classes on dealing with, on recognizing racism and dealing with it and feeling it in my body and all of that, to even get to the point where I felt like I could talk back. And it's still scary as hell. I think especially just how I grew up with, it's still scary every time for me.
Sandra, I think TJ wrote something.
Yeah, let's say the same thing. Do you want someone else to, since you just spoke, to like, if your voice needs a moment? I think I'll just looking.
No, I didn't know if they also sent me a message saying whenever it was for the next question, so that's why it was early. So, STJ, autistic people are sometimes huge bullies of each other. I think some people have a specific view of right and wrong and have every right to fight for what they believe. I think the problem arises when some of us have various experiences that shape our views. Instead of nuance or listening and asking questions first, we try to fight for our beliefs. This is true of all people in social interactions, yes. But I feel like certain autistic people have decided on certain ideas, and any variance from the norm of those ideas is met with more than passion. It is met with intolerance and intransigence. I'm sorry. A lot of people have many reasons why they don't agree with certain views on therapies, terms, symbols, and whatnot, due to racial, religious, regional, and situational differences. We should be asking why people believe these things that are seemingly against us or our enemy territory.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think too that sometimes there can be, like between autistic people, a misunderstanding of intention. And like here we all are all talking about being bullied, and some of us feeling like we don't trust people, some of us feeling like we overtrust people. Like we all clearly have trust issues, or not all of us, but a lot of us have expressed that. I know, like, not that I'm amazing at this by any means, but I've done like a lot of personal work and reflection on like trying to, before responding, trying to find out the intention, especially with other autistic people, but all people, honestly. It helps me because, you know, if I say something, let's say Brandy says something that my immediate reaction is like, "Ooh, that didn't feel good," and I respond out of that, like the amount of energy that usually takes for me, and sometimes to later understand that what Brandy said wasn't in a different context than what I interpreted, it doesn't feel worth it. Where if I like stop, and especially if it's with someone I trust, like Brandy, say like, "Hey, this is like what I heard. What did you mean?" Or I keep talking about how Sandra and I have been talking about my communication, but it got brought up because Sandra, it wasn't anything offensive, but they said something I didn't understand. I asked them to rephrase. They said it again. I asked them to rephrase again. And I think they thought I understood after that time, but they didn't. I just stopped asking. And so I know for me personally, not only can I be, or for a long time was on the defense, like ready to protect myself, that mixed with sometimes like not understanding the context can be really challenging for me. At the same time, I don't think that's like my responsibility as a trans person if something is said to me that could not, like, I think it's the person who's speaking to me, it's their responsibility to kind of like evaluate what they're saying about transness and if it could be harmful, right? And when that happens, it's up to me, like if something offensive is said, it's up to me if I just am like, that felt terrible, if I walk away, if I like ask for context, because in that situation, it's like, I don't want to open myself up to feeling harmed, right? But if someone says something like about something that's not a part of my identity, like if someone says something racist or like anti-Black, for example, and I feel like that is my responsibility to ask for context. And because in that case, we can have an exchange that, which I should put energy into as a white person, right? We can have an exchange, and maybe there's something, maybe I misunderstood them and can explain to them why that might not feel good for other people to hear out loud. Or maybe like I understood them completely and they said something completely purposely anti-Black. And instead of, you know, one of my Black friends or any Black person being responsible for that conversation that's constantly put on you all, it's like, if I take that responsibility, maybe it will alleviate some tiny thing of like experience of anti-Blackness a Black person has to experience, if that makes sense. Or like not force a Black person to have this conversation with this person. Maybe that won't happen, but maybe it will, and that's my responsibility. But when it's about me, it can be very different. And I feel like I kind of have the right to not assume best intention if it's harmful to me. And I do think that happens a lot in the autistic community. I think it happens everywhere, but because we can tend to be upfront, and people have been talking about Black and white thinking, like I said, it's taken me a long time to stop and evaluate what I say before I say it. And I do it to an extreme sometimes, like I silence myself, but I'm getting to a point where like, I don't know, it's more comfortable like asking for context.
I think this important to note too is that like when we're dealing with things like, you know, isms and phobias and stuff like that, yes, there's, you know, intention, but there's still impact. And like when, you know, sometimes I think we got to get to a point too where, you know, if someone says that, you know, this was harmful to me because of I, you know, I took it to mean X, Y, and Z, or this is why, that, you know, we can believe them, you know, like I'm pretty solid on my, you know, experiences of racism, you know, as being Black and all. So if I do say something was racist, you know, why can't you just believe me? Because that happens a lot online. Like I've had conversations with autistic people about how they should be able to watch trauma porn, and to say, no, that's horrifying and absolutely racist. And then trying to tell me why I'm wrong. And it's like, no, it's like, maybe I do have the lived experience there. You know, I think that kind of, people might need to think about that sometimes too.
And just to add, I know I was talking for a while, but sometimes like bullying happens, whether it's between autistics or not autistics. I think sometimes with autistics, there might be this idea of like, why would an autistic person bully another autistic person? Like we all experience that, but like these, I will always, like, I'm not saying I always did, but like for me, who I am now, if I'm being told about a dispute between two people and one person clearly walks through the world experiencing more oppression, my bias will go there. It doesn't mean I'm going to not ask for context or try, but I think like starting, like if there, I would expect it from other people too. Like if there was something like some kind of dispute between myself and transgender autistic woman or masked person of color, I would hope that people could kind of take a step back and go like, wait, who feels more entitled to speak here? Who has more power in this position? Like, and sometimes you can't, that's a very hard thing to evaluate, right? But sometimes it's not. And so it's really, I think it's really important to step back and go like, because sometimes bullying does happen without intending to, but the consequence is bullying. And so there could be like, if it's between a trans person and a non-trans person, there could be some underlying microaggressions, transphobia that's not being said. It might not be obvious to like, I don't know, like a non-trans person, but to a trans person, it might be like either really obvious or give a familiar feeling. And so like, and people shouldn't be expected to explain that. Like, I shouldn't be expected to, you know, try to explain to all you if another autistic person is, I feel this like anti-transness, I shouldn't have to give you all context, because that puts more work on me. It forces me to like really like put into language something that's almost impossible, you know?
Oops. I just wanted to say that I think being so public about ourselves on social media, Jersey, what you're saying, it's all like true, but it makes it really hard because I think I forget that I really don't know people who are sending me messages, you know, and that I should be more careful. I think the challenge for me is to really think before I click that button. You know, I'm an empath. If someone asks me for help, like from the other part of the world, I can't sleep, like thinking I should be doing more. You know, for that person, it's like, I can't just switch it off. And it's really tough for me to walk away sometimes. And contacts, I forget that I don't know that person and that person's contacts. So whenever something like happens, maybe someone says something negatively about me, you know, and that person is influencing their circle of connections, and I'm outside of that circle, and I don't, you know, it's very hard to just not say anything because it's all emotional, I think, for all parties involved. And I always chant to myself, there are always two sides of the story. There are always, you know, and I don't think badly about people. But I can only, maybe one way I can protect myself is just like hold my own truth and ask people who I trust to understand the context, because I think context is something I struggle and I get into trouble for it. I don't see the other side, you know, and so that's the downside of being like on Instagram and Facebook, and we forget about the boundaries.
I feel like this is kind of a hard question to answer, but I put like, have you or have we ever bullied somebody? Did you realize it? Did you change?
I actually just answered, somebody in the Q&A also asked that question, and I just typed out a response, so I'll read it aloud what I said. Yeah, so, and this is Latina. So I said that, yeah, I have bullied people in the past. As an autistic teen, and as I was trying to mask and be neurotypical, whether or not I realized that's what I was doing, it's what I was doing. I said a lot of mean things to people. I was, especially when I was trying to be funny, because I knew I was supposed to crack jokes. They didn't, and I still don't. Comedy is my least favorite genre of anything. So I just don't understand humor very well. And I've gotten a little bit better at this point where I can dish it, but I still like can't take it. But back then I didn't even know how to dish it. And I would say things like, one particular example is that there was this person in the 8th grade that I would tease a lot because they were physically developing, I guess, slower than, you know, it was middle school, y'all. Like, we were all developing at different rates. So I thought that I was just talking about the obvious. And then, which is something that I do all the time. I just say the obvious thing and people just start laughing. So I think it was around that time that I noticed that if I said obvious things, people would laugh. And so I would point out this person's like physical development and people would laugh. And I didn't realize that it was hurting the person. I never realized it was hurting the person until a couple years later, it like hit me. And I've always thought, I wonder if that person hates me, like hates the memory of me and like what I did. And then another thing I would do is I used to create nicknames for people without thinking about the effect that that nickname would have on them. And so for one person, I called them Elephant. Like, I just literally would call them Elephant. Like, there was nothing behind it. I was just being my autistic self. And I called this person an elephant all the time. And then one of my best friends, their name was Chelsea. I actually had like 5 best friends named Chelsea because I changed friends like every year because I because of these reasons. I'm listing here and being bullied and stuff. I had a friend named Chelsea, and I liked the fact I used to call her Chelly, and I would like to rhyme. So Chelly Skelly. And then at one point I was calling her Chelly Belly. And I had no idea that that could be tied to someone's weight, elephant and Chelly Belly. And it was going on. I was doing it for a while. And finally they were like, you need to stop, and like freaked out on me. And it clicked and I immediately stopped. But I was doing that for long periods of time and it impacted them very much. But whether or not it was unintentional, it was still harmful. And I did engage in bullying behaviors.
I found myself engaging in like group bullying because I didn't want to be the one that was bullied. And so if I joined the group, I was safe. And like I would always feel really bad about it afterward. And it would like haunt me, like loop. And then there would be certain times where I would try to join in a little bit, but I would do it wrong and I would end up going too far and like, saying something that was just like, whoa, like, well, like really mean and not realizing that that was like even over the line on something, and so it just, yeah, I just wasn't very good. And then what I would end up doing is just drop that entire friend group and just move to something else. I would just kind of like have to just walk away because it would be like too much. And so, yeah, but yeah, it was like, yeah, I still think about it. It was almost like if I join in, then I won't be the target.
Can I read? This is Tiffany. I bullied my younger siblings. I wasn't able to bully others as a really young kid because I was only repeating things. I didn't have the ability then. I replayed so much bullying in my head. Bullying about how I acted and how I spoke is still very difficult and triggering for me. I don't know how to heal. I've been in therapies for much of my adult life. I feel like only finally being away from my bullies as an adult, like my spouse or jobs. I may be healing now, as I have a good therapist now, and I have gotten away from situations and people that are bullies. The problem is that I generally realize bullying so late, not until it's bad. And due to that, I completely lost trust of myself and my intuition. Why do I keep inviting bad situations and people into my life? So that means I can't allow myself to make decisions for myself. I'll only mess it up. That's how bullying has eroded my sense of self and control.
Yeah, that's very relatable. I've heard like a few people bring up how like bullying. I know Brandy said it and Matt said it in reference to Brandy. TJ saying it. I've heard just like a lot of people bring up how it like informs who you become, and I just think that's so real. Similar to Brandy and Laura Melissa, like I too, when I was in middle school, I've always been perceived as like very witty, and I think that's just me saying something in response to something. Like again, like sometimes I don't mean to be funny. Now I can tell when people are going to think something's funny. But that I can remember in middle school, I was talking about how Jewish people would get bullied. I feel like Judaism and Hinduism, where I grew up, were like the two things that were targeted. And if you joined in with the non-Jewish kids, talk like making fun of Hinduism, you got in with the non-Jewish, non-Hindu kids for a moment and weren't getting made fun of. And that was like so clearly, I just have like this, especially this one time in the hallway, just like playing into it, like not, or that's even the wrong way to say it. Like I was like copying what people were doing because it made me feel part of something for like a moment, and it wasn't targeting me. But on like healing from bullying, I feel like, yeah, TJ, you said that well. It's like, I don't know. All I'm focusing on is like, you know, being my best self and like what my core values are. And when I do feel like I'm being bullied or attacked in some way, deciding in that moment, like, do I have the energy to engage in this in any way? And if I don't, like, that's can be really helpful for me. Sometimes people will say like, don't respond. But I feel like if you have, when I have like a balance of like, I know I can say something back to this jerk that will just like make them land on their face, you know, make them be like, that can be healing in the moment. Like it can be like, you know, someone says something that's like super uncool about like autistic people, or there's like a hidden meaning I'm picking up on. It's like, well, I'm never gonna like call anyone a name. I'm never gonna be deliberately mean. But sometimes I think it was Lauren Melissa that said this, but it's like pointing out the obvious is enough to like make people flabbergasted. like if someone's being a jerk, if there's some underlying thing and I feel that happening, sometimes like responding with a question that puts them in a position to answer why they're questioning me is like very helpful, you know? But yeah, does anyone else have any, I guess healing in general too, it's just like prioritizing myself. I think, yeah, like I was saying, groups of people like that, like having a group like this, there's something very like knowing we're being, you know, open and honest with each other and a whole lot of people. And we're all doing our best and we all do have good intentions, and that like I could, and I have done this a lot where I contact one of you or to be like, do you get the context of this thing that was said to me? And it's like feels good to have support. I guess that's part of like what autism support is, right? Like knowing you're not alone in something, knowing like, yeah, like in school, I don't have to fight for my accommodations because somebody is helping support me that can take that on. It doesn't always happen. But this is like another good example of like having a group of people, a growing group of people that see the best in each other. It's like, I know I can come to you guys and say like, what do you get out of this disagreement between me and someone, you know? And also that I'll have support if somebody is bullying me. Like I know for a fact, if I hit up any one of you because somebody was being a huge a-hole online about me being trans and I wanted it dealt with, but I didn't want to deal with it, I know I could say that to any of you, which is like, I don't know if I would, again, it would depend on the place I'm from, but that's like something new, you know, and like really cool to like be able to be like, hey, like friend, ally, support, whatever, like, can you take this on? Because I can't, you know.
And I think to your point, Jersey, having a group like us, I mean, I hear all this and I just want to give everyone a hug. Like seriously, like this is just like, it's heavy, it's deep, you know? And yeah, I really appreciate all y'all.
I think something that I really enjoy doing is like reading the chat box, because it's not just us, like the panelists that are in this room, like we're talking and engaging with the autistic community. And I think that's why autistic communities can feel so relieving once they're discovered. Like once we discovered the autistic community and having this moment of like, of course, there no community is perfect and there's conflicts, but just even knowing that there's a community out there online that understands the experiences at a much higher degree than like the holistics that I grew up around is it's been monumental. And I haven't had the time to in a while, but one of my favorite things is to do is to just like randomly go on Instagram live. And it's totally not because I like staring at a camera for like an hour and like talking for an hour by myself. It's because I like seeing the chat. I like reading what people are saying. And I love seeing other autistics talking to each other. It's so exciting. It's something I just don't get to see in my life. And I think that that has been healing in a lot of ways, is just being surrounded virtually by the autistic community.
Oh my gosh, autistics talking to each other. I love it. I love like when I can tell two autistic people have some sort of relationship. Even I don't know how much people message or if they know each other in person. None of that matters to me. But you can tell there's some kind of connection when you're reading like a comment section, and like so either like let's say someone comments on something Laura Melissa says and you can like feel the connection, or like I comment on something Laura Melissa says and then Matt comments under something I say that shows like that connection between us. That's like my favorite thing, to look at long autistic chats and like just see these like people have inside jokes, you know. I just love it. Like it makes me so happy. Yeah.
Yeah, like when someone asks a question in the comments and then someone else answers and then someone else adds, and I'm like, how did this comment thread get so long? And it's so exciting. And I'm just like, yay, we're talking to each other. And I think it's just so special. Yeah, and I think it is healing. You know, I feel like there's more positives than negatives. And like when that happens, which is rare sometimes, you know, to have more positives than negatives in a space. And that fills me with a lot of joy. Yeah, just to see that. It's the autistic community, like there's a lot of trauma and a lot of collective trauma. So to see a community space where there's more positives than negatives, given that context, is, I think, so uplifting.
I was going to say, I also appreciate, Josie, just I'm looking around at all of us and I'm like, I don't even know how he did it. It's like all of these backgrounds coming together in this space. And, you know, I grew up like just really being the only, you know, the only Black person who could not talk about being Black and was never acknowledged for anything around race or anything. How that impacted, but then, you know, realizing that, you know, these diagnoses coming, like I'm 40, and the last couple of years having to, you know, relearn who I am again, a whole over again, and lean into these identities and then uncover more of them. And they keep uncovering. And I'm like, I don't even know who that person was the first 40 years of my life. But to be in this space, in this time, at 11:45 at night, for me, it is something very special. It is a very special space, and I just love hearing all of your stories, and finally, like feeling like people get it. That I'm not just talking and people are looking at me like, you know, or not talking about it. Well, normally it was not talking about it. It's just me like just losing it and just like melting down and, you know, in a corner crying to myself or whatever. But just to be able to be in a space with others who understand parts, the hard parts, you know, the ugly parts, that has been, has meant a lot to me. And tonight has meant a lot to me. I was a bit worried about the change at the last minute, not gonna lie. The energy has been, yeah, it's been hard and heavy, but I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of these. And thank you for giving me that today, particularly. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm grateful to be here, and there's nothing like knowing that I've got you all have my back. So I'm super thankful.
Of course. Were you going to say something, Laura Melissa?
I was, but like, I first just want to be like, Daisy, thank you for saying that and for taking that moment. Like, look, Brandy's crying now. Like, I think what you said was very real, and like,
Yeah.
thank you. I was honestly like going to segue off of what Sandra had said about community and be like, also, we should probably talk about how you can build community through Hiki app. But like, that was not appropriate anymore after what Maisie said.
I was going to awkwardly bring it up anyway. So I was totally like, okay, we're going to be wrapping up soon. So what better than a perfect transition than Laura Melissa awkwardly bringing it up and me awkwardly jumping on top of it. I'll go first, so Brandy can take a moment. We just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, one of which is Timo, which some of you probably already know, some are active users, some work with Timo. Thank you, Laura Melissa. Yeah, so if you don't, you can check out the app at like the Google store or whatever. And for me, it's been a really awesome addition to my life. And I've been really honest with Timo that it actually took me I am so not okay with change, that it took me like 6 months to transition into actually using it. And now, Brandy too. Brandy actually hit me up and asked if I like it. And I was like, and this was months ago. And I was like, well, I got it 6 months ago, just started it last month, but now my life has changed. It's really helpful. You get to use like icons and timers to create your schedule. The way I do it is I actually am transitioning schedules because I just finished school. But I had one schedule specifically for classes that I had to be at in person. And over time, I started adding other things to that calendar that I had to be at in person. And then I have a separate calendar for like assignments, because it can get really confusing if you just put assignments on the day they're due, because then you don't get them done or get them done well. So I use like there's multiple calendar options. Aesthetically, I would say that I'm like many of you, I have a sensory processing disorder. I don't realize how much it affects my life until I feel like very pleasant with a sensory experience. And I'm like, wow, this is nice, or at least like at ease. I prefer looking at things with like calming colors, pastels, like the stuff Brandy uses in a lot of their art. And I do get that from Timo, so that's also really nice. I'm gonna pass it to you, Brandy.
Okay, and our second sponsor is Hiki app, and I work for them as the social media and community manager. And it's awesome. It's an app just for autistic people. We're always getting, information from everyone, trying to make the app better, and we're always doing what we can to make it as safe as possible. It's free. You can download it on Google Play or iTunes. It's awesome. We have different features, different from other dating apps. And it's actually not just a dating app, it's a friendship app also. So they have like these two different things. You can do smiley face if you just are looking for friendship, and a heart if you're looking for a romantic connection. And there are all kinds of different people there. And it's pretty cool. Yeah, they even have things like, what's your favorite STEM, or what is your special interest at the moment, or things specific to autistic people. And if you aren't sure about how to start a conversation with someone, we have like pre-done conversation starters that you can just hit the button and not even have to worry about it. And that was taken from polls from autistic people. So on their favorite ways to start conversations. So yeah, so if you're looking for a cool app, give it a try. It's spelled H-I-K-I, and it's Hiki, which is the Hawaiian word for able.
And the last thank you I want to give before we wrap it up, of course, to all of you, but also Macy may have mentioned, they have a nonprofit called Autism Career Pathways. And us as a group, we've been referring to ourselves as the Autistic Collective, and these events is the actually Autistic Roundtables. And thank you to Macy and Autism Career Pathways for fiscally sponsoring us, which means we can now accept donations that are tax deductible. So please, like, if you want to support our work, if you want to see this going on long term, you can now donate to us through Autism Career Pathways. So you can just go to Autism Career Pathways website and make a donation to us. We're very transparent about the funds at this point. The funds go towards one of our sponsors. Timos helps sponsor our Zoom chat. Hiki helps sponsor our live chat, which is happening. And donations that come in from individuals at this time are split up amongst us for people in the Autistic Collective who accept the funds. Some people rather redistribute them to other people in the group.
The donate link on Autism Career Pathways is not valid.
So it's on, it's on Venmo.
Oh,
It's
okay.
at ACP-2019. Sorry, I can't spell right now. It's at ACP-2019. It's 2019, right? Because that's when our nonprofit started. So that's, sorry, ACP-2019 on Venmo.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but I was like, there is no
That's okay.
donate.
No. I feel like Laura, Melissa, Matt, like while you two seem to take care of different things than each other, the things you like look out for and take care of each other, I just like or take care of. I just appreciate, because they're not things I'm checking on and don't think to check on, or like yeah. I mean, that was a good example. Things with guidelines, everything technical ever. So yeah, before we go, why don't we just end off with something kind of pleasant? What was your high of the week? So the best thing that happened to you this week, or something decent.
I have one. Matt and I were, I don't know where it's going to go, but Matt and I were contacted and interviewed today to be on the show Love on the Spectrum. So.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah.
So we
Do you know that I suggested you to? I talked to someone from it last year, and I told them to contact you too.
That's right. I remember.
Not that
No
that's
way.
what did it, but I was actually like talking to a live person, and they said, "Do you have any recommendations?" And I was like, "The first thing that comes to mind is definitely these two."
I remember you saying that. Yes, and yeah, it was just kind of random. Yeah, I ended up getting an email, and we're like, okay, why not? And then instantly they were like, they booked us for a Zoom interview today, so we'll see what happens. So thanks for the shout out them, by the way.
The question was, what, yeah, highlights?
Yeah, just something that stands out to you that was good this week.
I turned 30.
Macy, you also had a birthday, right?
I know, I did, but I didn't want to add to the number. I'm just gonna stay the same, because last year was a big number. I did get to celebrate, had to cancel my trip, and still canceled. So I'm just gonna keep waiting until I can celebrate.
Tippy, said, I feel like I conquered many OCD things this week. OCD has been wreaking havoc within my life, and I feel like for the first time in 2021, this week I didn't have any trouble at all.
I'll just say that there's not like a particular event that stands out to me, but it's been really nice and sunny. And I've just, like I said, I finished school like 2 weeks ago now, and this is the first, maybe halfway through this week, I started actually feeling like human and like woke up with energy, which literally, I don't even know the last time I felt that way since school. So I feel like I've really got a chance to like enjoy sunshine this week. Anyone else want to go before we head off? All right, everybody, it's been fun. I look forward to next time. Happy birthday, Laura, Melissa, and Macy, and you're all the best. And people in the chat, when I say you, I mean all of you. So it's like not just the people I'm staring at.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Have a nice weekend.